I remember coming in the door from our garage into the house, and our dog had been alone overnight, and so she was just beside herself to see us, and she was jumping up on us and so excited. And I kind of sunk to the floor and just kind of let her jump all over and lick me like crazy. You know, we were exhausted. We hadn't slept well at all, and I know that, you know, Craig went up to change clothes. You know, he had been, you know, sleeping in his jeans and shirt, and I know the minute he left the room, I was immediately in panic. I just was like, I needed to be with somebody. I needed to have him close by, because it was just the sense of my whole world had just been shattered, and I kind of needed that one constant person in my life next to me. And I know at some point the funeral home contacted us that day and said, you know, can you guys come in this afternoon and start making arrangements? And I remember pulling up to the funeral home. My parents had met us here, and we drove together, and we get out of the car, and I'm kind of lingering back, waiting for Craig to get out of his side of the car, and my dad kind of comes and tries to take my hand and walk in the funeral home with me, and my mom stopped him and said, you know, Claude, she wants to, you know, wait for her husband, and felt really bad for him in that moment. I go to the funeral home, and there's this young kid who greets us. Name's Colin, and he's probably not that young. He's probably in his, you know, mid-20s, but he just looked like he was fresh out of junior high to me. And so Colin kind of greets us, and he come in this small room with my parents and Craig's parents, and we sit down and kind of start talking about arrangements. And Craig and I had talked before we went to the funeral home about what our wishes, you know, what we thought we should do, and the only thing that I could come up with in that moment was to have him cremated and bring the ashes home with us. I wanted him to come home with us in some way, shape, or form, and the ashes were the only thing that I could think of. I wanted him close by us. I knew it wasn't him, but it was a tangible piece of him, basically. And so Colin said, great, you know, let's pick out an urn. And he opens up this catalog of urns and said, okay, there's, you know, back here, there's some, you know, where the kids and babies' urns are. And there was maybe like 3 or 4 to pick from, and it was this really pretty gold, and had a teddy bear on it. And the obituary was very simple. It just said that, you know, Curtis was born into heaven, and he was survived by his parents and his grandparents, and was a baby with a halo and angel wings, kind of like a drawing. And my father-in-law had seen that, and he asked if we could have that put in there, and Colin said, yep, you know, that's fine, we'll request that. And then we had started to talk about what we wanted for a funeral, and at that time I decided that I just wanted, you know, family and very close friends. I was just wanted a small group of people, and we would just have it in the funeral home that Saturday. And one of the things that the nurses had given us was, like, in this memory basket with all this paperwork and stuff, there was a booklet in there called, it was kind of like a baby memory booklet, sort of like a baby book, but about the baby who had passed away. And in that booklet, the nurses had put his footprints and like a lock of his hair. We decided to go through some of his things and pick out like the outfits that we had decided to, we had bought. It was going to be his coming home outfit, or the outfits we bought when he found out he was a boy. And my grandpa had handmade a cradle that was waiting in our house for him, and we wanted to bring that to the funeral as well. And when we came home from the funeral home that day, we came home and there was probably 5 or 6 deliveries of flowers outside our front door. And I remember like standing there, I'm like, why are people sending us flowers? Like, I did not understand. I was like, it took me a good 5 minutes for it to dawn on me. People send flowers when somebody dies. I had gotten some pictures from the nurses, and Colin handed over the pictures to us, and they were waiting for us, and he's like, oh, he's so cute, when he like handed us the pictures. And I remember opening up the pictures, and I remember thinking, that's not how I remember him. I remembered him, you know, rosy skin and very much looking like a sleepy baby. And in the pictures, his skin was more bluish toned, and he definitely looked dead. One of the things Craig had read in one of the books was that taking the pictures and turning them black and white can kind of soften some of that, discoloration. We took the memory card to Target, and we were, they've got those little photo kiosks, and we were kind of messing around with that, trying to get them to turn black and white. And they said, well, come over and help you. And she, of course, didn't know. And we said, this is kind of sensitive. We don't, it's a baby who's gone, and we don't want to, she's like, no, I'll come help you. And she came over, and she showed us, she hit the couple buttons, and she walked away. And Craig said, later she walked away, he said that she had a couple tears in her eyes. So, it makes me feel good knowing that stuff, that, somebody felt a little pain for us in that moment. My dad called. He goes, I want you to know that your Uncle Carter is coming to the funeral. And I was like, what? I mean, it was just, my uncle is flying from Hawaii to come to the funeral. I know that wasn't, yes, it was for me, but he was coming to support his brother. His brother had just lost his grandson, and, it's what families do for each other. And my mom had put together this really nice little mini photo album of pictures of Curtis. We had a couple, like an 8x10 blown up of him, and then a 5x7 of Craig and I and Curtis. Craig and I had spent some time the night before filling out the memory book, both of us writing letters to Curtis in there, and we had a lot of stuff, for a little baby who, he wasn't even born alive. We had a lot of memories already. I had pictures throughout my pregnancy. We had pictures of his room. We had, just tons of different things that we had gathered for him, that we had, pulled together for the funeral. And we had chose to run Curtis's obituary in the Sunday paper, and they said that's what a lot of people do. They, they don't bother about it during the week. They just have it run, the big one run in the Sunday paper. And well, they always have early editions on Saturday of the Sunday paper. So we're kind of standing there, and I said to Craig, hey, should we get the Sunday paper? And it wasn't on his radar at the moment. And he's like, well, why? And I said, well, his obituary is going to be in there. And so, we're sitting there, and I think we both have, 32 ounces of pop, and Sunday, the paper where our son's obituary is. And I remember getting in the car, and I was rustling through all the papers and all the coupons, looking for it, looking to see his name, looking to see our names in the paper. And so we get to the funeral home, and Craig and I had picked out a couple different things that we wanted to read, that I was going to read. I remember saying to my mom, well, I have this thing that I want to read. And she's like, oh, somebody else can read that. I said, no, I'm going to read it. She's like, no, Chantel, somebody else can read that. We can find somebody else to read it. I said, no, Mom, I want to read it. And she's arguing with me about this, that, that I wasn't going to read it. And I'm sure it just felt too sad to her, or just that, she was worried for me to get up there and read it. And I'm like, no, Mom, he's my son. I'm going to read this.
Chantel wanted to speak at the memorial service, and she wanted to read a nice poem and say a few words. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to talk, but I was going to go up there with her in front of our family and close friends, and she was going to read this poem. And I think her wanting to do that is a testament to what a great person she is, what a wonderful mother she is. She wanted everyone to understand in that room that even though it was a sad day and we were mourning the loss of our son, that we didn't regret having him, and we didn't regret being able to meet him.
People started to arrive, and I know the funeral is at 11, and it's about 3 to 11, and the priest isn't there yet. Craig and I are looking at each other, we're like, what? We hadn't arranged it. It wasn't anybody that we knew. Colin had arranged it, and he walked in a couple minutes after 11, and we kind of threw the readings at him, and it was like, okay, well, this is what we want you to read. And he forgot my name at one point. He said Craig, and he was looking around, and somebody from the little audience yells out Chantel, and so it was just like, oh, buddy, just be done. And I remember not crying much during the funeral. I think it was just something to kind of get through in that moment. I was still in so much shock. So I get up, and I remember like Craig and I getting up. Craig comes with me, and I'm going to get up and say something and read this poem that I wanted to read. And I remember a couple people like gasping, like, oh, she's going to say something. And, you know, I get up and I read the poem, and I tell everybody, I said, well, don't feel too sorry for us because we got to, you know, meet and hold our baby boy. And so don't feel too bad for us because, you know, there's been good that's come out of this. And,
after the memorial service, we all went back to Chantel's parents' house, and we had some food, and everyone kind of, you know, hung out. And one of the things I remember from that day is my grandma, or Gram we call her, who's since passed away, her saying that getting the call about Curtis passing away was the worst call she'd ever gotten in her life. And I thought about that later, you know, think about a woman who's been through, outlived 2 husbands, and, you know, is nearly 90 years old, saying that, and just thinking about, you know, how much I appreciated her saying that.
After the funeral and after Craig and I came home, we're sitting there looking at each other, and neither one of us could. I kind of wanted to sit on the couch, and Craig is pacing. He's pacing around the living room. He's like, what do you want to do? Let's go do something. Let's go do something. What do you want to do? He's like, let's go to a movie. So the day of our son's funeral, we went to a movie because we didn't know what to do with ourselves. It's like, well, what do we do? You know, we went and saw the most, even worse than King Kong, this movie called RV with Robin Williams. It's about a family. And it was just a lighthearted kind of movie. And there's a scene where a father and son are playing catch. And of course, I start crying during it. I mean, it's just...
For several days, maybe several weeks after we lost Curtis, Chantel and I had this strange thing where we didn't want to be apart from each other. If she was sitting on the couch watching TV, I was sitting on the couch right next to her watching TV. We didn't stray far from each other. And I think it was mainly just us wanting to be close to someone who really understood what we were going through.